I mean, honestly, we do. We really need just this good, positive news for a change. Because a lot of the COVID news isn't looking great. I mean, and a lot of the things related to the lockdowns. I mean, like I said last week, I mean, I told that story last week. It's that all of that stuff is starting to get pretty dicey, and it doesn't really looking like that's going to change anytime soon. I see I do see some pretty bad stuff out there. Like for example, I mean, I'll tell you this much. So, I mean, I'm sure that everybody will recall that last week I told that story about somebody that I know being assaulted by one of the anti-mask people. And I did see one thing on Twitter here this last week. I actually saw a video of a pro-mask guy actually chasing a woman through a store demanding that she put on a mask. Now, according to the story, it looks like this woman had some kind of an exemption, some kind of a medical reason or something like that, why she couldn't or shouldn't be wearing a mask, but this guy wasn't even willing to hear that out. And she was trying to get away from him, and she was asking him to get away from her. And this guy was actually chasing her through the store, demanding that she put on her mask. And eventually store staff, they had to confront this guy and tell him, hey, leave her alone. So you know what? Let's be clear about this. It isn't only the anti-mask people that are driving the violence around this issue. So let's be clear about that. I know that all of the incidents that I've talked about on this podcast so far have all been incidents of anti-mask people driving this violence. But they're not the only ones who are driving this violence. A lot of pro-mask people are engaged in this kind of behavior as well, and quite frankly, they should know better. They should be the ones who should know better. Because if you believe in the masking and all of this stuff, well, then another thing that you're supposed to be doing is you're supposed to be socially distancing from people. You're not supposed to be chasing them down in a department store trying to get them to put on a mask. If you see somebody not wearing a mask, you stay your 6 feet away. That has nothing to do with you. If the store management are really bothered by the fact that this person's in their store not wearing a mask, they'll do something about it. Who knows, maybe they'll even call the police. I'm not sure that that's the best way to go about it. But they might go so far, but that's not up to you, that's up to them. So you know what? I mean, hey, just stay in your lane. Just stay in your lane, do your business, leave other people alone, and that's going to improve your odds of getting through this whole thing just fine. Now, one thing that I did do this past week was I attended what I previously would have called an anti-mask rally. I guess the people who are organizing these things and attending them, they're actually calling them anti-mandate rallies. But I did go ahead and I didn't really go to one to participate in it so far. There was somebody there that I wanted to talk to because I was actually hoping to get a little bit more help. Kind of trying to take down the temperature a little bit so that less of this stuff is going on. One thing I'll say about it is that what was going on at that rally was not even remotely what I was expecting. I mean, all the people there, they just want people to hear their piece, which is to be expected. I mean, if they didn't want that, then they wouldn't be holding their rallies. And there were some people there who I would categorize as maybe a little bit overeager, kind of trying to jump into conversations that other people were having. But if you're at one of these things, and the worst thing that happens is that you have to ask somebody to kind of butt out and let you have the conversation that you're currently in, if that's the worst thing that happens, that's a pretty good day. These things are not what a lot of people seem to think that they are. They're not riots waiting to happen. They're not a bunch of yahoos who are just going to go flip out on the first person to show up and have a different view than them. Although, I have to say that really some of these pro-mask people very much do seem that way. They're just people that have a different view of all the of the whole COVID situation, and in particular all of the mitigation measures than the rest of us have. And to me, if that's a threat to your public order, well, then I think maybe you should kind of reevaluate the nature of your public order. But there are people out there who are just, they're out of their minds about this whole thing. I've actually seen this online where people go online and they complain if there aren't mass arrests and mass ticketing at these rallies. And it's, well, if you wanted to convince these people that all of the COVID measures really are that repressive and that they're being oppressed, Mass arrests are a pretty good way to do that. I mean, let's be real about this. That's not what most of us want. That's not what most of us want to see out of this, but if the only thing that you really want to see out of this is that you just want this whole thing to make people do what you want them to do, if that's what the COVID pandemic is about to you, well then, hey, you're probably all for mass arrests. You're probably for all mass ticketing. You're probably for people snitching on their neighbors if they have Christmas dinner. I do also see people online saying that they're going to... I have also seen people online, places in like on Facebook and on the Twitters and places like that, saying that they would do that kind of thing, saying that they're going to rat people out if they know that their neighbors are having Christmas dinner. With family members from outside of their home. And I got to be frank with you, if you're the kind of person who's thinking about that, I think that maybe you're not thinking through exactly how you think that you're going to get through. How you're going to get by with your community after this whole COVID thing is over. And if we're fortunate, the arrival of the vaccines is providing us with some light at the end of the tunnel. Life after COVID, that's not years away, that's months away, if we're fortunate. I mean, yes, the government here in Canada has done just an abysmally poor job getting vaccines. I mean, they got, in this, at launch, they have something like 250,000 doses of a vaccine that requires 2 doses 3 weeks apart. They got 250,000 doses for a country of 38 million people. Yeah, no, that's not a runaway success at all. But even though the Trudeau government has prolonged this thing by dropping the ball on the vaccines, there is an end in sight. So that means that if you're one of these people that's going to run around ratting on your neighbors because they have family over for Christmas dinner, it means at the time when you're still going to have to be able to try to get along with the rest of your community after COVID is done with, that's not in the distant future, that's in the near future. I mean, so is that petty thrill of just being a Karen and making everybody do what you want them to do? Is that going to be worth it? Well, the best time to decide that is right here and now, because the time when that whole thing is going to come into play and have potentially real consequences for you is not as far removed as you think. Thank you. The best part about having an inanimate studio audience is that you can make them agree with whatever it is that you're saying. Now, hopefully the return of hockey, I mean, just having something that people can put their eyes on and take their minds away from all of this trouble. Hopefully that's gonna calm things down a little bit and really help us out. Now, I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. Just because your neighbors shouldn't be ratting you out if you're having Christmas dinner with your family, it doesn't mean you shouldn't at least make some effort to comply with those public health orders as best as you can. I have seen people trying to tell people that you can't be ticketed for them because they're not the law. That's not true. The Public Health Act allows for these orders. It is the law. So yes, these laws do have, these public health orders, they do have legislative force, and you can be ticketed for them. I've heard people coming saying that, that the police, they can't come into your house. Well, unfortunately, because of the public health orders and because of, different parts of Canadian law, yes, they can come into your house, if they arrive and they think that there are people and they're violating a public health order. Just because the whole thing sucks and just because nobody likes it doesn't mean that you can't get the tickets. Unfortunately, you can. It sucks. So I'm going to encourage everybody to do the best that they can to follow those guidelines. But you know what? If you don't, the cops, they definitely won't be hearing about it from me. There's going to be no judgment about that over here because you know what? Everybody's just got to live their lives, and hey, you know what? It's Christmas. This is a shitty thing to be going on during Christmas, but you know what? It turns out that the pandemic didn't care about the calendar.